So I'm back, and I'm back in my kitchen as usual. And I'm here to do sort of a quick synthetic analysis of what's happening now before I have to go to, cook. So Queertio says this. First of all, what we're seeing is the results of the kind of accumulation strategies that were important in neoliberalism in terms of just-in-time production, in terms of a very scarce inventory, so you don't have a lot of inventory. And what we're seeing that was in hospital care, in terms of hospital beds that were eliminated over the last 40 years through basically the Reaganism regime, if you want to call it, from 1980s on, and also healthcare workers being exploited at higher rates. That's the first piece, that just-in-time production got generalized to the whole society, including education, actually, with the charter school movement. Two, agribusiness. Agribusiness and basically animal, livestock have driven a lot of the genetic mutations that we're seeing, or the development of new viruses that we're seeing. This is the work of people like Rob Wallace and other disease ecologists who are looking at how deforestation, penetration of the habitat of animals we usually don't have a lot of contact with, have created novel viruses like the virus we're seeing now, the COVID-19 virus, which seems to have, what we can tell so far, originated in bats. That's capital. That's Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, all these large banks basically trading in the kind of food and agribusiness economy that is basically killing us, along with the cheap food regime, the sugar, the fats that we depend upon in the United States, many people, for nutrients. So what we're seeing is capital accumulation strategies on a global level that have an irrational metabolism between human beings, our companion species, and nature. So that's the second point. Third point, economic crisis. What we're looking at now is a crisis of oversupply and underconsumption because of the basic means we've had to pause the economy and get people to stay home for those who can. And my suspicion is that we're looking at 20, 25, 30% unemployment in a society, specifically the United States, that economy depends on 70% of it on just consumption by ordinary people, not by the wealthy, but ordinary people. So what we're seeing is an economic collapse or an economic crisis that will go on for a while. And we actually don't know when it's going to end. Uncertainty is one of the great problems. Mass unemployment, mass economic dislocation. And again, this is the result of decisions of capital around how we're going to have our food supplies, how we're going to have our logistics supplies, how dependent they're going to be on technology, all these other things. So what we're seeing is an economic crisis of great proportion. We haven't seen an economic crisis like this probably since the Great Depression. So we're going to see people immiserated, poverty, people losing jobs. And we're going to have to create mutual aid for that. We have to create our own ways of doing things. The government should chime in. But again, the packages that they're offering right now are about whatever, a couple $1,000 for a family of so many. And then that's it. Good luck. Not going to work. A political crisis. Two-party system that's broken in this sense that Donald Trump was able to take over the Republican Party and make it a white nationalist party, which is what it is now. And the Democrats were incapable of incorporating its left wing into its social democratic, mild, New Deal liberal left wing into its project. And that is a problem. That is a serious problem. The only solution out of this at this time, temporarily, is in fact a kind of social democratic redistribution. I don't believe that's going to happen. It may happen in drips and drabs, and whatever state intervention you have, it's going to be, I don't know what to call it, a militarized or Keynesian pandemic. I don't know what to call it, pandemic Keynesianism. But anyway, it's not going to be enough given the kind of crisis we're looking at. But the political crisis is the crisis of the reproduction of elites. People don't believe them anymore. People also, there's this contradiction between people wanting to return to normal, Obama and Clinton, I guess, and that's not going to happen either. That is not going to happen. Things have broken, and we've seen the instability of the system. We've seen the fundamental instability of the political institutions and the lack of faith that people have in them. So we have that political crisis. What we see is what in the old Greek language you would call apokalupo, looking at my notes. It really means to unveil. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I mean, some people have this crazy notion that John Patton was talking about the end of the world. He was actually talking about an empire and how Christians were persecuted by an empire, and he was critiquing an empire in this symbolic language, right? So what we're seeing is an unveiling of these four horsemen of the crisis now. Basically the pandemic, which is basically a result of the climate crisis and the kind of strategies of agricultural business, mass, and livestock that we've seen. The political crisis that has begun over a long period of time, and I think really began in the late 60s and 70s. The economic crisis in terms of not only stagnation in these large capitalist economies, but also a problem in terms of consumption when we know this is not going to be the last flu virus. There simply isn't, given the kind of economic practices we've engaged in. And of course, the economic collapse that we're looking at. To me, as a social scientist, an observer and a participant, right, in the society, we're looking at a type of social collapse. Don't pin your hopes on going back to normal. Normal isn't very good for most people in the society, and it won't be good now. It won't be enough. Comrades of mine have talked about a general strike on May 1st. People in Cooperation Jackson, people in Black Socialists of America. I agree. Let's bring back the May 1st general strike tradition. We should do the best we can to support that. Healthcare workers are now a key frontline constituency, and we need those radical voices out there. And this is going to be a little startling, those protests of people with guns, white folks with guns, wanting to end people stay at home and social distancing, that's the development of a right-wing popular militia. We have to start thinking about that on the left. Popular militias, popular education, popular action. The election, whichever way it goes, is not going to solve these fundamental questions or these fundamental problems. This is the time of the unveiling, my comrades, my dear friends. Look, see, act, judge. And know that queer theory loves you very much. And then when this is all over, come to my house for dinner. Love you. Bye.